As we move towards the vision of New India, it is important to impart the right education to young India. We have BJP leader, Rajya Sabha MP and author Dr. Subramanian Swamy to discuss the role of Indian gene in education. Senior Journalist Kaveree Bamzai will also be joining the conversation.
How are you, Mr. Swamy? All well?
Yeah, it's going strong.
Great. So today we thought we'll talk about the Indian education system and perhaps compare it with China, because we so love to compare ourselves to China. And this is perhaps something that we really should emulate from them. But you know that better. So I'd like to put it to you that what kind of education system do we have we had so far? A lot of people tend to think that it's produced Macaulay Putras and Macaulay Putris and pseudo liberals, a very popular word with a lot of people. Would you agree with that?
Well, I would broadly agree with it, that this system has not changed much since Macaulay's time. And Macaulay stated his objective very clearly. He said, I want to create people who are Indian in blood and Indian in color, but in habits, they must be emulating the British. They should dress in British code, that is suit, boot, and all that. And they should speak English, not Sanskrit. And that they should adopt British morals. That also he said very clearly. I don't know what British morals are like, but anyway.
Yeah.
So then he ensured, he said that one row of a book stall is worth the entire Sanskrit literature. And many places where we know about the Mughals burning down our libraries, but the British also went systematically by. But they were a little smarter that they wrote an alternative history. The Mughals, they just burnt up things, but they didn't form an alternative history. The alternative history is not, we are not one country, we are not one people. The north is Aryan, the south is Dravidian. These are words which they have taken from our texts. And Dravidian, actually, originally, Shankaracharya, Adi Shankara was the one who created that word, means where the three oceans meet or the three coasts meet, Travid. You see, Travid became Dravid. And then the Aryan, there is no such word as Aryan. There is only a word called Arya, and Arya applies to anybody who's a cultured person. It could be northern, southern, eastern, western. Right. So he created this Dravidian movement, which said that we originally ruled, and then the Aryans came from Europe, and then they were lighter skinned. Of course, if you are living in the north in the snows, you're going to be in the lighter skin. And if you're going to be near the equator, the pigmentation will change, and pigmentation's got nothing to do with race. And that is why now the DNA studies show that we are all one Indians. There is no such thing as Northern Indian and Southern Indian. So they created this psychology, and then they wanted people who would become clerks in their governmental establishment.
Right.
And anyone who thought independently and had any ideas of freedom, he was brutally treated. Look at how Savarkar was treated. Yeah. You may not like Savarkar's view, but his fundamental problem, which with the British, was that he said he wanted India to be free. And he said that we are traditionally a Hindu country, and it says Hindu culture should be the foundation. And they made him into an extremist, they made him into a thing, and so they ruined his life and tried to break him. So the same thing goes with others. Now, in the case of Mahatma Gandhi, of course, they because he was so non-violent, he didn't want an overthrow. They put up with this, but frequently sent him to jail. Subhash Chandra Bose, they were frightened of him, and especially after he was able to collect together an army and this impact on the British Indian Army. The British had always said very clearly, as long as the army is with us, we have no problem staying in India. The day they turn against us, we have to leave because we are too small in numbers. And 1857, they had been systematically building a submissive army, but Subhash Bose had created this feeling. So I'm going back to say that what they created is somebody who's complicit, who doesn't think out of the box. And the rest of the society will pounce on anyone who thinks differently. And that happened to me when I came back from Harvard and I said socialism will not work in India. Mrs. Gandhi was the one who, was most upset. And I wasn't allowed to teach. I was sacked from IIT.
You weren't allowed to teach at Delhi School of Economics as well, wasn't it?
Yes, that's right. See, I got a letter from Mr. Amartya Sen, who was the department chairman, saying that please come here. We have decided that you will head the chair for China and be a professor. When I arrived here, he disowned his letter. He says circumstances have changed. What circumstances? The Congress split and the communists joined with Congress and they part of the coalition, ruling coalition. And now all these communists decided that they will make all the institution communists, like the JNU was made. So he said, no, I can't implement this thing. I'm sorry, I can't live by my letter. And so meantime, the IIT, which had been earlier writing to me when I was at Harvard, I told them I'm available and they appointed me as professor. And I taught there for about 3 years. And I wrote a book called Swadeshi Plan, which irritated Mrs. Gandhi so much that in the floor of parliament, she read out extracts of it. And of course, she named me Santa Claus. He's promising the atom bomb, he's promising self-reliance, he's promising this. But ultimately, that's what worked. And during the transition. So anyway, the thing is that this illiberalism has come from that time. You see, it's not a question of something that we have acquired recently. It has been continuing. No one with a view, which is sort of is a replacement for the existing British education system, was permitted, and they were all run down as extremists, as Hindu fanatics, fascists, Hitler, and so on. And it still continues to some extent today, but it's becoming less and less. So I think when you say pseudo-liberal, it means that you're only liberal for those who think like us.
Yeah.
Anyone who doesn't think like us, you don't think that's a challenge? Let's have a debate. Let's discuss. Let's see who. This is the Hindu tradition. They're called Shastras. This Adi Shankara went all the way from South India to North India to argue, and converted all the people from Buddhism back to Hinduism. So that's our tradition of argument. And this argument, you see, was taboo. As long as it's all right, you can argue within the framework that the British put us together. We are Aryans and Dravidians. We are not one nation originally. And the British put us together. And we must be liberal. We must treat, Hinduism is not anything special compared to other religions like Islam and Christianity. And, secularism means full equality. It means, not to talk about the past. And then you become an obscurantist if you talk about the past. Yeah. So this is the format in which we have been functioning, and that's still continuing. And I regret to say BJP has not been able to bring about a cultural change, which is what we originally said we would do. We are still struggling. The educational system has the same books, same nonsense in it, same untruth in it. And we unless we make these changes, these pseudo-liberals will be turned out. And this English language, which we are using it just now because of compulsion, actually makes it easier. And therefore, from the very day one, Mr. Jawaharlal Nehru didn't agree. Otherwise, we could have imposed not Hindi, we could have said Sanskrit.
Right.
And like the Jews have recreated Hebrew, we could have, given a rebirth to Sanskrit. Devanagari script, which is not only Sanskrit script, but Hindi script, Marathi script, Nepali script. It's a most scientific script. And today, just one more point. Today, those who are working on artificial intelligence say that ultimately we have to start storing knowledge in the computer. And there's only one language which doesn't confuse the computer, and that's Sanskrit. And that's appeared in the Journal of Artificial Intelligence produced by NASA. You can get it in the Google. If you go to Google and type Sanskrit and artificial intelligence, it will come, or Sanskrit and NASA, you will get the citation. So in this circumstance, unless we change these basics of our education, you are going to continue to get these pseudo liberals over. And if you fall foul of those people whom we call as liberals, pseudo liberals, they will go after you. They will block your appointments. They will, keep you out of the media. They will, make you out to be some kind of fanatic. That's kind of thing. And now they have got allies in the abroad who are a little frightened of this unity that's emerging in India. And therefore, India would be will be entitled to be a third pole in the world after America and China.
So do you see the new any hope in the national education policy which the government announced last year, which in fact talks about some of these things? It talks about going back to ancient texts and it talks about experiential learning. But do you see any hope in it?
Yeah, these are all, kind of like a khichdi, see. A little bit of this, little bit of this, little bit of the question is, when you go to a class, what does your teacher? I've been taught by Paul Samuelson, Simon Kuznets, Vasily Leontief, all these great names. Usually, there's matchless. They're like, nine.
Wrote all our textbook. Yeah.
Yeah. So they used to make you think. Here, whatever the teacher says, you memorize, reproduce in the exam, you'll get the marks. The room for original thinking, research was not there. Of course, I was a rebel, so I started doing research even at the age of 19, which has earned me my scholarship to Harvard. But the fact is that most people are told to pay attention in class, listen to what the teacher says, and then literally reproduce it. And the teacher will mark you down if you don't repeat what he says, even if it's right or wrong. So that system has not changed, and there is no, yes.
What needs to change?
What needs to
fundamentally?
change?
We have to.
What needs to change is two things. First, it should not be necessary to get a bachelor's degree or a master's degree to get a job, which is reasonably decent. You see the number of, I think 75% of our people go to from school to college to get a bachelor's degree. In the United States, it's only 35%. In China, it's 40%, 45%. Now, that doesn't mean that China is less literate. They train people for technical things so they can get a job, they can become mechanics, so they don't have to go through get a BA. We have, even for mechanics, minimum qualification is BA. You see, so therefore, first is that those who go to higher education must be committed to research, and they may drop out, fail out. But the second is, you need to give a very decent salary to the teachers. Now, maybe in Delhi University you get a decent salary, JNU may be given even more decent salary. But in the schools, the primary schools, if you see China, you see America, and see what the difference is, much of the thinking process is developed in schools, high schools.
Yeah.
And by the time they come to college, if they go to college, they go straight into writing their own papers. In the United States, we hardly had question papers. These are take-home exams. You could look at your books. Yeah. And then the teacher used to look whether the answers have any originality. So that kind of thing is not there in this. And who are the ones who did it? The education minister doesn't have much education. I mean, he has in one very limited field, but not in the field of education. And the people they brought in are, people who have no scholarship, no research papers, who have not. So that whole same cycle goes on. It's only they have not been able to. They have not been able to revise it. We need a revised, actual, factual history book. Who we are. When Indians don't know who we are across the length and breadth of the country, how can you have a change? So this is just a lip service. And look at the allocation for education. This time they've reduced it.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so,
absolutely.
in long years ago, 1966, Kothari Commission was set up to find out what should be done for education.
They
And
said
these said it should be
6% of the GDP.
6%. And we are not even
6%.
1.5%.
We're just about 3.5%, sir.
3-5 points, including salary, everything else.
Exactly. Yeah, all that.
In terms of school buildings, books, and libraries,
Yes, yeah.
1.5% of it only. So, therefore, I would say that teachers, you should be able to attract teachers. You should have your folklore, which says, like we had in the ancient days, that Acharya is is bigger than the king. You see,
Right.
and then make it so attractive that he doesn't have worry about. In those days, of course, the acharyas would just stick their hand out. People would put money in their hand.
Right.
So today, we haven't reached that stage back again. So make the salary so much that the teachers never have this problem. What will happen after their retirement? In fact, jokingly, after I was sacked from the IIT, at a very young age, 28,
Right.
and I was restored after almost 45 years or something, and I got my back salary.
Which was
And
what, 18 lakh or something, right?
Yeah, in lakhs. Because the 8% interest was also added.
Yeah.
And all my previous teachers who were along with me in IIT, they told me, "Hey, we are much worse off than you. We thought your career is gone, you're doomed, you're finished after you got sacked, because we knew you wouldn't get a job anywhere in India," which I didn't.
Yeah.
But they say now you have got a lump sum, which even our retirement fee and gratuity, nothing adds up to it.
So the seeds of success are always in one's failure, I think,
Absolutely. This is another thing you have to teach our people.
Yeah.
Take risk.
Yes.
I give you an example. At Harvard, I had 40 students usually, and there are many countries, including India. So I asked to after the classes were over and the people are about to graduate and formally get their degrees in a convocation. At my last class, I would ask them, now that you got a Harvard degree, what kind of an employment are you going to go for?
Right.
So they said, you tell us what the alternative. I said, one alternative is that you take a job in the corporation as an officer, and every year your salary will increase 5%. And you will end up at the age of 65 to retire with all your gratuity, etc. And you buy a house and watch television for the rest of your life. But it's no risk at all. The other is like Bill Gates, he threw Harvard.
Yeah.
He left Harvard halfway through and became a billionaire.
Mark Zuckerberg did the
Yeah, that's right, exactly. And so I said, and became billionaires.
Yeah.
So do you want a risky prosperity, or you want a guaranteed poverty? Which of the two would you like?
Right.
And Americans would say, please tell us what's the probability that of risk that will fall flat on our face. But the Indians always said, no, we want that guaranteed poverty job because it is guaranteed.
Yeah.
It is poverty.
Yeah. But that's
that mindset must go.
mindset. Yeah.
Yeah. You know why? Because economic growth is no more considered by economists. I mean, true economists, not all the hoi polloi you see in the finance ministry. True economists knows that economic growth is not only more capital, more labor, but it's also more innovation.
Right.
Locomotives, they transformed Britain into an industrial revolution. Right. The Americans been since then inventing. Now the latest being the internet, which has completely revolutionized everything.
Right.
So innovation is the key. Today in India, if we are able to convert thorium, we got 60% of the world's thorium into uranium, usable uranium. You will have what others will not have because uranium is getting exhausted by 2047.
Right.
But we are not doing it. You have shortage of water. Israel has no rivers, but every tap there has 24 hours of filtered pure water. How? because they desalinate seawater.
Right.
And that the Arabs have also copied. So this Dubai and all these places are greenery
They're
entirely by
fantastic.
desalination.
Yeah.
So why don't we do it? Why are we fighting about Kaveree? I mean, not excuse me, nothing to do with you. Kaveree, this water. Every year we fight Karnataka and Tamil Nadu. Just desalinate seawater,
Right.
and you will get all the water you want. So therefore, innovation is not in our blood.
Yeah.
We have to teach people, and innovation means you have to provide the system
Mhm.
where people have a reasonable risk, padding for risk,
Mm.
but they must take the risk, and you can tell them these are the things we want. Hydrogen fuel cells.
Mm.
I've been talking about it for the last 15 years.
Yeah.
When people thought it was a mad idea, but today it's become a practical idea, but we are nowhere.
Yeah.
You don't need to import crude oil.
Right. So there are two aspects to this. One, in the US, it was really the Defense Department which was researching for weapons, etc., which came up with actually almost every innovation that exists. And the second is the Bell Laboratories model of, people from different disciplines meeting each other, often in the canteen, as used to happen at
Yes.
the Bell Laboratory. And that sort of transdiscipline, interdisciplinary thinking. We
Yes.
have neither. Why is that?
Because
we have a very powerful military organization in a way, don't we?
no. You see, the thing is, in America, what happened is there was this Great Depression, and they didn't recover it till the mid-30s. Then this Hitler posed a threat, and they had to go to war. And so during the war, all these innovations and all started. And then after the war, in the 50s, they continued. And a lot of research grants used. The National Science Foundation was set up. We used to give grants to teachers in various universities. We are looking at this, we are looking at this. Please tell us how to do it. So they went about it systematically. In our country, all our research institutions the heads are appointed by the government. And these guys generally are sycophants who haven't done any work. Many of them may claim an education qualification, but deeper look, it's all fake. They don't have that. I don't have to name names, but I can name people at very high places who don't have a degree, but have claimed to have a degree. So that bureaucratic setup has to go. See, in the United States, most of the top universities are set up not with government money, but with alumni's money. Harvard is set up by alumni. And then Harvard, manages funds. Same thing is Brown with Chicago, with, everywhere you find that universities are run by alumni. People who are grateful to the universities come back. We have no such system. Alumni can't go back to IIT because IIT is run by the government of India. At the level of board of governors appointment.
At most they can finance a chair or something. That's what they can do at the most.
At the most, and then he has to. The director has to give him freedom. I have experienced it in IIT. I wrote a joint paper with Paul Samuelson, which has become world famous. But you would not believe it. The director of IIT set up a committee to see whether it was a coded language for CIA. And he appointed a chairman of the physics department to go into my research paper. I couldn't even tell Samuelson this, I would have felt so ashamed. Of course, nothing came out of it. But this is what they did to harass me, you see. CIA, and that he is passing secret messages to Paul Samuelson to pass it on to CIA. I mean, could you say it? And he was Mr. Dogra. Mr. Dogra's only qualification to be the director of IIT was his wife was doing ikebana or some Japanese gardening thing for Indira Gandhi. That's all. And he was appointed. He was a CPWD Mistri. You see, not Mistri, but he was that contractor that was. From there, he became IIT director. So how do you expect? You see, there has to be some respect for, which is our ancient tradition. Jnani and Tyagi was considered the highest.
Exactly.
The king came below him. You see, that has to come. And see, the Chinese have actually adopted many of these Sanskritic principles. They give
Right.
plenty of autonomy for basic research. I mean, economics and all that, they throttle you if you step out of line. But physics, you know, Wuhan, what happened, it misfired, but they were on a
Yeah.
very advanced research. Artificial intelligence. In artificial intelligence, the Americans are saying Sanskrit is the basis for its computer knowledge storing. But we are nowhere. The Chinese have gone very far ahead, and they can blow your electricity network. They can blow your weapons. It's S-400 that you are getting from the Russians. They can make it fizzle when the aircraft is taken off with it, you see, and there'll be a crash. So the Chinese have gone in for these innovations in a big way in the last 20 years.
Is that not a model that we can follow? After all, at one point, we were almost equal, weren't we?
No, we were ahead of them till about 2005.
Right.
After that, the decline started, and now during Narendra Modi's period, the gap is widened. See,
Right.
Narendra Modi is a great, architect of putting through an electorate into a tizzy and all that.
Yeah.
But look at the fact that he has systematically avoided anyone in politics who had any talent.
Yeah.
Either he retired them saying that they're too old, because now he's stuck with Mr. Sridharan in Kerala, who's 89 years old.
Exactly. Talk
But-
about age limit.
But there is an anti-intellectualism in our government today.
Right. Right.
And then of course all your intellectuals anyway have been their backs have been broken. They are all singing his tunes. So the academic atmosphere is necessary where we can replicate the Chinese. The Chinese are very clear. Social sciences will strangle you, but basic sciences you are free. These are things we want. You want what you want, we'll give you.
Right.
And these universities like Tsinghua and all, where Xi Jinping himself graduated from, they are given so much freedom to do what they want. And they have come up and they have all gone, all their scholarships have been paid. They've gone to America because after Great Leap, their education system had suffered, and they all come back and they are now professors with great freedom that they have. And they have now today in so many areas, they've overtaken us. Even in software, now they are overtaken us. Earlier on, we were the giants in software.
Right.
But then we were basically blue-collar workers. And now
we basically focused on the back office and then
That's
really
right,
start
that's
thinking
right,
of
that's right. You're right.
hard power. So,
Absolutely.
I mean, if there were 5 things or 2, 3, 4, whatever, things that we could learn from China in investing in education, what would you say these would be, and what kind of time frame would you give us?
See, the time frame is, if the will is there, it can happen. See, people told me from for almost 1950 to 1990, we followed the Soviet economic model.
Yeah.
We never crossed 3.5% per year GDP.
Right.
And what did they say? This is the Hindu rate of growth.
Right.
I don't know whether you heard this phrase
Of
before.
course. This was
Okay.
pre-liberalization. This is all we used to hear.
That's right. And it actually was a communist rate of growth because we are following the 5-year plans and so on. What happened, it began with Mr. Chandrasekhar, but he lasted very little. But Mr. Narasimha Rao made a clean break.
Yeah.
And we went up to 8% in 5 years from 3.5. And people that said at that time, please go and read the newspapers, that, Narasimha Rao is gambled and he's got people like Swamy to drive him nuts and so on. And economy will collapse. In one blow, he removed all the quotas and the licenses, and the thing boomed.
Right.
He had only one car, Fiat, and perhaps Hindustan Motors. And now we have cars. All that the pent-up energy has been now exhausted. So we need now to build a new energy where we reduce taxes and tell people if you earn innovation, everything is tax exempt for you. In fact, I am in favor of a blanket abolition of income tax, because that will enthuse people to save, and that saving will be available. So we can, if you ask me, are we potentially capable? 100%. We will overtake China in no time. because we are a free country. And so there's a much more a greater likelihood of free exchange of ideas. But the problem is everybody's insecure that, this guy will get ahead of me, that will get ahead of me. I don't understand what he's saying, therefore he must be speaking gibberish. This insecurity is the bane of our society today. How do you make a person secure? And the insecurity comes from the top right down, going down, down to the lane. The section officer is afraid of the chaprasi, and the and the deputy secretary is afraid of section officer. This is the thing that we have to overcome by a cultural change.
Right. And that's peculiar. I've never seen people higher up in the hierarchy being afraid of those lower down. It's
That's
a
right.
peculiar thing,
That's
I find that very odd.
That's right. That it's not odd. It's insecurity. See, insecurity, you will always be afraid of your shadow. Although you should know that the shadow can't do anything to you, but the people are afraid. Yeah, they are afraid. This insecurity is being built in over the years of the British system, where you could lose your job if you even spoke one word against the authority. And that's been convenient. We are a democracy, not because the literate people in this country want democracy. It's the illiterate people who wanted it. See the voting in 1977. The entire educated South voted for Indira Gandhi.
Right.
It is this illiterate masses of UP, Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, Bihar, who voted 100% against Mrs. Gandhi, even defeated her in her own constituency, you see. So this cultural base is there, but it has to be built on, not by threats, not by danger, not by opening bank accounts. And yes, if you are a person in high position and you have committed corruption, you should be prosecuted in the due process way, not by blackmail. You see, so this fear that is there has been consistently throughout the last 75 years that we have been independent, has been compounded and made more extensive than it was in the British period.
So what can we do? We can certainly invest more in education, build more universities, but it's not just building more universities, it's also the mindset.
Absolutely. Well, if you want the long run, the long route, parents should bring up their children to be questioning.
Yes.
If you go to America and a father and mother are taking their the son and daughter to Disneyland, you will find all through the walk that boy and girl are asking their parents, why this? Why he's got such big ears, Mickey Mouse? In India, if a child asks more than one or two questions, he says, shut up, otherwise I'll give you a smack, We don't encourage people to question. So it has to come, it can come fast, you see, because this has been our ancient tradition. It's easy to, it's just dormant. It's just dormant. You just to awaken it. You have to just awaken it. We are today a democracy still because of our ancient traditions, you see. And we are still people who, if they don't talk in the front of your face, they talk behind you at least, which they can't do in Soviet Union and other places. But we do. So we have that background tradition, which extolled dissent, and had debates. Even the conversion of Buddhism to Hinduism was done by Shankaracharya by debates. He said, if I lose the debate, I will convert to Buddhism. If you can lose the debate, you convert to Hinduism. And that's how he changed the whole country. So that's a tradition which you have to bring. Be tolerant of people's views, have respect for them. And of course, there are limits, there are reasonable restrictions to all these freedoms. But you must exude that confidence that yes, you will you'll welcome. The more you do that, then you don't have to do it for the schools, education, this thing, that thing. All will come as a part of that. It is the way of thinking without a mental block. If you read any book on emotional intelligence, what does it say? Of course, there are other intelligences like spiritual intelligence and innovational intelligence. What it says is your mind should not be blocked. When you first write a research article, Never criticize yourself while you're writing it. First write it, second draft you start the criticism. So there should be mental blocks that are there, they should be removed, and it can be, it needs propagation, and it needs propagation from the top. And conformity is something that you should not insist on except where discipline is required, like in the army. But otherwise, conformity should not be imposed on the people. And this westernization, the idea that we must be westernized in order to be modernized, that mentality must go.
Dr. Swamy, I wanted to ask you a personal question. How did you're a product of the same system. How did you personally sort of overcome all these things? After all, you went to the best institutions as well. And you could also have been a Macaulay Putra. How did you escape that trap?
I think in childhood, I was rated my parents had 5 children. And I was rated the dumbest.
Really?
Absolutely. And they all, they were used to speculate whether I'll be a chaprasi or a trainee in the Bhilai style. There was a new steel plant coming up called Bhilai Steel Plant.
Yeah, of course.
Whether I'll become
of modern India dams and steel.
that my future lay in becoming a foreman in Bhilai Steel Plant. I'm telling you, I was run down completely. But maybe my mother was secretly improving my confidence. I don't know. But I didn't do very well in school. But suddenly I was, brilliant, broke all records in college in mathematics of the least expected. And today, many of our people, my father's friends and their children, so on, whom I knew, they feel a little shamefaced when, I confront them with what they told me. I have a bad memory. So I would say the biggest thing that happened in making a serious change in my mental attitude was my training in America.
Okay.
Where these professors loved you, they promoted you. There was no running you down or making fun of you. They welcomed you making mistakes. And then correcting it. That is the Jewish tradition.
Right.
Which immigrant Jews came to America. Right. America is losing a bit of it now because it's getting polarized society. That is the thing that promotes. In my case, it is that 10 years in America at Harvard with the PhD and then teaching there, that set my mind. And then when I came back, I faced all these discrimination. But I had the mental attitude that I will not go back to America, but I'll fight it here, even if I have to give up my teaching profession. And one success led to another. In sense, it was always up and down, but the more the ball was pushed down, the more it went.
Right.
And even today, I have the same problem. I've been run down by my own party members who have been paid to tweet against me and so on. It doesn't matter, but in all, the most important thing is this has to be inculcated. It can't be born. You can't be born. Have a thick skin. Just ignore criticism. Do what you think is right. And you may ask people's advice, but ultimately you must make up the mind and blame nobody else.
Right.
Then I'm telling you, if all people's great lives, you have to read the biographies of many people. Get that confidence.
Yeah. Right. So did you in your childhood look up to anyone in particular? I'm asking because a lot of students, struggle. They struggle to find their core. They struggle to find their self-confidence. Was there anyone you looked up to?
No, absolutely none. Because I was never, told about anybody because they thought I was a gone case. I mean, just basically, as I told you.
Did you resent your father for doing that, or did you?
I had a big quarrel with him, but to his credit, 3 days before he died, he told me that he wanted to apologize to me. I said, what for? So he said, I've been very harsh with you. I said, that doesn't matter. It improved me. So I have to thank you. I mean, it was good of him to have. So yes, no doubt. I had problems with my father. Of course, like all Hindu mothers, my mother, anything I said was right. I can't do any wrong. She was the other extreme.
Right.
But my father,
Sometimes
I
you
had,
need that unconditional love. I think you need that to
yeah.
build your
Oh,
self.
yeah. Mothers are capable of that, and that's what you need. Yeah,
Right.
it's true.
So, to any aspiring student, any aspiring researcher, if you had that Harvard class in front of you again,
Yeah.
what would you tell them? What are the two things that they need to do?
Well, this is an attitude which has to be cultivated. It's not natural.
Right.
Not what you are taught.
Yeah.
And I've learned this from Gita.
Hmm.
Never be afraid to take risk.
Right.
Of course, talk to people and make sure that you're not taking a wild risk.
Right.
Okay. 2, never be dependent on your mood to be dependent on the result of your action.
Right.
And that's what Krishna teaches you also in the
Yeah.
Gita.
Right.
You are only entitled to work, but the fruits of that action, I will decide.
Right.
And you will get it in which form, what, when, and all, it'll be part of your karma. And one day you will get something without doing anything, and someday you will get nothing after doing a hell of a lot.
Right.
So take that, in your stride. So I will say to everybody, and it is, I run a class online for all these matters through the Virat Hindustan Sangam, which
Yeah.
I created. So there, I only say this: you have freedom to act, but you have no right to expect the reward for it. You can work for a reward, and you can hope that you will get it. But if you don't get it, nothing, move on to something else.
Right.
That attitude, in my opinion, which Gita teaches us, is something that should be taught in schools also.
Yeah.
Here, everything is marks. I got 2 marks more than you. Oh, great celebration, you see. But that is the problem.
And so, would you add self-study to it? If you don't know something, then study it. Do it yourself if you have.
I tell all my students, I've told all of them in my class, read what I'm going to teach tomorrow.
Right.
Come to class and pay attention.
Right.
That means concentration. It's a training. Then go back and review what you are taught.
Yeah.
I can tell you, you don't have to study for the exam at all.
Yeah.
I broke the record at Harvard. Nobody can pass the PhD generals within less than 3 years. I passed it in 6 months. Nobody can get a PhD without less than 4 years. And that from the toughest thesis advisor, Simon Kuznets, I got it in 1 year. And I became a member of the first Asian to become a member of the faculty at Harvard. So these are, people think, when they think of me, they think these are all shows of I have some genius. No, it is you select a target, but don't be attached to that target.
Right.
Take advice, speak to her, but go with self-confidence, do your best, knowing fully well that the only freedom you have is action.
Yeah.
The result of that action is not in your hand. If you have that, you'll be forever happy. I've never been unhappy in my life, must tell you very frankly. At no stage, it sounds very corny to say that, but I've never been unhappy in anything that happens.
Right.
Because I follow this Krishna principle.
Yeah.
Never think that the right to the fruit is yours.
Yeah.
It's Krishna's calculus that is going on.
Right.
And he'll do it on karma.
Yeah. If you had to be, would you be reborn as Dr. Swamy again?
If I've not committed any sin, I won't be reborn at all.
Right, of course. Thank you so much. It was such a pleasure talking to you. And I think it's very inspiring to listen to it as well, especially for young people, I think, who at this moment in history are really facing a very uncertain future.
That's right.
And I think they really need something to hold on to, which is not really, currently there's, as you said, such a wave of anti-intellectualism sweeping the country that they tend to think that, a life of the mind doesn't matter, but it matters, doesn't it?
Absolutely, no question.
Yeah.
Freedom to think and allow the other person to think also. They say, I was never allowed to think. Whatever I said, I was, made into a fanatic, and that is spreading all over the world. That intolerance. You can disagree.
Yeah.
You may not want to keep the company of somebody else, but don't say that he can't hold these views.
Yeah.
Unless it's, of course, against the country. That's, but that has to be a very strict definition.
Yeah.
It can't be a loose definition that if you're against the Prime Minister, you must be against the country. Then, can't have that.
Thank you so much for talking to us. It's always been a pleasure. Thank you.
I know you've always been a good interviewer also.
Thank you very much. That's a great compliment coming from you, sir. Thank you.
That was an intriguing conversation. Hope you enjoyed that session. If you want to catch the other sessions, you can log on to eventexpress.com, newindianexpress.com or edxlive.com. If you are more of a social media person, you can also join the conversation on Facebook, Twitter or YouTube. Thank you for watching.